Hi, everyone. Welcome to Historically Speaking, an online YouTube history channel focused on the history of various institutions and professionals and people, how history intersects with education and culture and the world around us. I'm Karen Yang, host of Historically Speaking. Today, we have a very, very special guest, Bobbi Gibb, who is an American former runner who was the first woman to have completed the entire Boston Marathon. She's recognized by the Boston Athletic Association as the pre-sanctioned era women's winner in 1966, 1967, and 1968. And she was the first woman ever to run and complete the Boston Marathon at a time when it was believed that women were not physically able to run marathon distances and were not allowed to compete in events longer than 1.5 miles. And while many people know her as the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, a few people know her as an artist. And aside from running, she finds a lot of creative expression through bronze and wax sculptures and acrylic paint murals. Her art is great. I will have linked her website in the show notes, so feel free to take a look. And she's also dabbled and worked in as an attorney in intellectual property law and at MIT as well. We are super excited to have you here with us today, Bobbi. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio or your introduction?
Well, it's so nice to be here, Karen. It's great that you've got this channel going.
Thank
I
you
have
so
to
much.
give you credit, that great initiative.
Yeah, thank you so much. Without further ado, I'm just gonna jump right into the questions. I guess because so much of the press around you has been surrounded with running, I guess, I kind of wanted to first ask, how has running shaped your life and what are some of the lessons you learned from running?
Running, I think running has always been a part of my life, even since I was a little kid. And running expresses kind of my joy of being alive. And even when I was a toddler, and my dad used to take me to the local park, and I would run along as fast as my little legs could carry me. And I get this wonderful feeling of being alive and being connected with nature and with the universe. And I still feel that when I sprint down the beach full speed, I just feel, like the energy of the universe is flowing through me. It wasn't so much a competitive thing or a sports related thing when I started. It was just the sheer joy of being alive here on planet Earth, which I always thought was such a gas. And even as a very small child, I look around and go, "Wow, what a gas to be alive here!" And the more I learned about nature and people and the earth, the more amazed I became at how all this is here.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I really love that. I definitely agree. I'm not much of a runner, and the only times I really run um just like outside of just personal exercise, I guess, was in school and we kind of do laps around the track. And I definitely agree. There's nothing like feeling out of breath and feeling like you've kind of run and your legs have carried you this far to make you kind of realize that oh my gosh, like I've never felt more alive and more human, and I can feel my heart beating like super, super fast, just like in that moment. And that definitely tells you that you're like living through all of these great things. And that's super, super cool.
Yeah, it,
Yeah. Oh,
it's neat. I mean, we take it all for granted. People tend to take being alive for granted and being part of nature. I mean, we're breathing the oxygen of the earth. I mean, this is amazing. We have this little atmosphere that we breathe. It's about 26 miles high. That's about the length of a marathon, the really good air that we can breathe. And then it gets thinner and thinner as you get up. And so we got this beautiful air and we breathe it in, take it into our bodies. And, we take it for granted, but it's just an amazing thing. And, to be part of this.
100%. And yeah, I think like I definitely never really thought of how like running is so connected to nature, but I know a lot of the cross country people at my school, they definitely like run through forests and you have so much like trees and the grass and all of that is all part of like the running experience, which I definitely think teaches you so much beyond just putting one foot in front of the other, but also to appreciate what's just going on around you as well.
Right.
Yeah. My second question is around, I guess, like one of the most monumental feats in like running history, I guess. What was it like running the Boston Marathon and like how did you feel in the process and immediately afterwards?
Well, it was incredible. It's hard to believe now But during the 50s and 60s, when I grew up, it was generally thought that women couldn't do a lot of things, including running marathons. And the life of a woman was very circumscribed and very limited, very few opportunities, very difficult to get into medical school or law school. And a woman was expected to get married if she was lucky enough to go to college right after college. In fact, she didn't have much other way of supporting herself besides getting married. And she's supposed to get married and then be a housewife for the rest of her life. And I was really frustrated at this as I looked, so much talent and ability of the human race was being lost with these women. Like my mother was an intelligent, beautiful woman, and she was so frustrated at just being confined to the house, basically. And I grew up feeling that same frustration. That's not what I want to do, just washing dishes and scrubbing the floor and shopping and cooking. I'm capable of so much more, and so are all women, all people are capable of so much more. And I always felt that, we all come to this world with some gift to give to the world, and we need the opportunity to develop that ability so that we can give our gift to the world. And I could see that half the human race was being denied this opportunity. In fact, if you look even further, there are many groups that are denied this opportunity of uh, being able to fulfill their own potential. And we're losing a lot of the abilities that we have on this earth.
Yeah, 100%. I think I find it really, really interesting that I think it definitely like that idea of coming through of just like, hey, we're not allowing a lot of people to reach their maximum potential by having these barriers in place or by having these kind of thought patterns in place or by thinking that like, oh, you can't. So therefore you don't get the opportunity to try something new out. I definitely think that like even among my generation, so many of my peers and even myself, like we place a lot of these limitations on ourselves. And while back in your time or back in just like in that piece of history, that limitation was placed on by other people, we see that kind of continue to take place and continue to take place without any of us really realizing that, hey, we can find a way, a unique way, whether that be running and whether that be just like speaking out to kind of ensure that we kind of break out of those molds as well.
Yeah, it's the damage of stereotype. We stereotype each other, stereotype ourselves, and fall into these things. And like, how do you know you can do something if you're never allowed to do it, or if you never allow yourself to do it? That's
100%.
that's right.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think that just like reading your journey, I love just understanding just kind of the process of how you first waited like half the people to kind of start running and then you started running and you gained momentum and eventually you were like, hey, like I can run among this like group of people and totally just show the fact that I am a woman. And I loved reading a lot of the personal accounts of just people cheering for you, of just like the great kind of crowd reaction with that. Did you feel like a lot of that momentum came from yourself or it came from other people? And like, how did you feel about that, I guess?
Well, I trained for 2 years to run the Boston Marathon. I didn't know how to train. I saw it in 1964 and I fell in love with it. And I decided to train. I had no books, no coach, nothing. I just started running longer and longer distances. And I trained. One of the ways I trained was by taking a trip across the whole continent, 3,000 miles, and I had a Volkswagen, my little Volkswagen camper, and my Malamute puppy. And at night, I'd sleep out under the stars, and then during the day, I'd run longer and longer distances all across the country. And it's such a beautiful country, and meet people along the way and stuff. So it was an interesting way of training. And then I got back to the Boston Marathon. When I applied to run, I got a letter back from the race director, Will Cloney, and said, women are not physiologically able to run marathon distances. And we can't take the medical liability, sorry. And so they wouldn't send me an application to get a number. And so I said to myself, all the more reason to run, because if I can prove this false belief about women wrong, I'll throw into question all the other false beliefs that have been used literally centuries to keep women kind of confined and subjugated. So false beliefs have done so much damage to the human race over the centuries. And so I wanted to challenge that false belief. And so I decided I was going to run and show. At the time I got this letter, I was running 40 miles at a stretch. And here I get this letter. It says, oh, women can't run 26.2 miles. And furthermore, it's a men's division race. So I said, well, I'm just going to show them that I can run, that a woman can run it. And then I was sure they'd open up the race for women once they knew. They just didn't know.
Mm-hmm. That is such an inspirational story, 100%. I think, like, first of all, that cross-country trip sounds really, really beautiful. I can kind of just imagine you. I don't know if this is like what you actually did, but I can kind of imagine like you in the desert or something like that with the stars above and just kind of running. And I think that's such like a beautiful way to train as well, just like on your own and proving your own capabilities without necessarily thinking about any of the other constraints, but then going on to face those constraints and being like, hey, like I don't stand for that and I believe that I'm capable. And you were so capable and being able to take on that, which is just super, super cool as well.
Well, that's the neat thing. I mean, I always really believed in democracy and this idea of the individual, and like that each individual is a very important, beautiful person. And we each came here to give something unique. We're all such unique beings. And so I just wanted to free people up to be themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I love that so much. Um, like beyond writing, I also find it super cool that you also engage in like the arts and in like medicine and even as an attorney. That's super, super cool. And like before the interview, we did talk about how you were just like super naturally curious about a lot of different subjects in a lot of different fields. I guess like what kind of messages have you kind of inspired or do you feel with your art and medical work? And how have these messages, I guess, intersected or correlated with your running and your running experience as well?
I think running, I loved running, and and running was one of the things that I really loved. And of course, being curious about everything. I always had this feeling of being here on planet Earth, like, why is it all here? What, this is amazing. Why not just one vast void? I always had this feeling of being surrounded by love, and this kind of this love out of which all this amazing world is manifesting. And partly, I think, because of my grandmother, my Nana. And she was such a warm, loving person. And maybe that sense of love came through her as well. And but I was also interested in everything. I mean, I'm thinking, wow, there's so many atoms and molecules, and why are they all here? I mean, just to create one atom is such an amazing thing. And here there's so many millions of them everywhere. And so the more I found out about science, atoms and molecules and photons and living creatures, and then the whole idea of a creature that's living, here's this organization of atoms and molecules that's kind of building itself into this living creature. And I always felt so related with all the other living creatures of the earth. Like we all have the same life force in us. We're all part of this amazing earth. And we're all, of course, us humans, all part of the same human race. And it just always seemed to me so miraculous. I mean, the greatest miracle that could ever happen is existence itself. And nobody has a clue why it's here. I mean, why bother with all this? This is incredible. And so I've spent my whole life like, wow, just in a sense of awe and wonder that all this is here. And it's so incredibly beautiful. And so the art comes also from this feeling of the awe and wonder of being alive here on planet Earth, and then in the universe. And of course, this westward trip, sleeping out at night under the stars. And the further west I got, it was incredible, more into the wilderness. And then I could look up at night and see the stars. And there were so many stars. I mean, this thing goes on and on and on forever. There's like no outside to it, no end. It's just, it boggles my mind. It still boggles my mind that it's all here doing this thing. And it's so intricate and so beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's definitely such a cool like image or such a cool just kind of like encapsulation of what your art is and how I think honestly like just like art and these different fields, a lot of it just has to do with, as you said, kind of just capturing what the essence of being human is and kind of expressing our emotions and expressing our feelings and our love for nature or for family or for a multitude of things. And I love how a lot of your art has centered around, you know, just like women athletes and their own experiences with that. And I find it really, really cool that, again, that your art and your running have so many different intersections along with the other facets of your life as well.
Well, I love people. And when I work, I do human forms, sculptures of people, usually in motion, people running or, basketball players or baseball players or whatever. I like to do sculptures of people running, but I also like to do portrait heads, and I do portrait heads, and I just feel so much love for the person that I'm sculpting, and I try to get their spirit and their character in the sculpture,
Mhm.
and so the sculpture itself seems to be alive. I just did a life-size sculpture for the Boston Marathon. It's going to go out along the course in Hopkinton where the race begins. So that was kind of fun. I'll probably do some more life-size sculptures.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think like definitely it seems like you infuse a lot of like life and a lot of joy and a lot of your like your own experience as well as the person you're making the portrait bust of and their experience into the art. And I think that I definitely through browsing your website and browsing through your work, I saw that there was like a museum for like artists or like sports people who also
Sports
made
museum,
art.
yeah.
Yeah. And I found that like super interesting to see that honestly like sports is in of itself also an art and how you like play out the game and how you craft out the moves or how you plan out how you're going to run and your whole experience running honestly is just super inspirational, super like artistic in a way as well. And art and sports are both here to kind of show us again the fact that we're alive and the fact that we're human and kind of experiencing all of these wonderful things as well.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. My last question, I guess, is kind of more of an inspirational one, I guess, in that like what would you say to young girls maybe around the world who might be scared to try something new or really break out from that barrier and that like stereotype, I guess?
Well, it's important to be yourself, to find out who you really are and what it is you love to do, and find out what gift it is that you have to give to the world, and not try to make yourself into some kind of stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
and just be yourself, to accept and love yourself as you are, and then to find what it is that you most love to do and what you came here to give the world. And many times we can change the world for the better. I've always spent my whole life trying to make the world better. And if we keep that in mind, trying to make the world better for everybody, uh, then I think we guide ourselves along the right path for ourselves.
I love that message too. That is like, yeah, I think I agree. Like, we all have very different backgrounds and different interests and different personalities, and where we're from and how we've grown up is also different. But I definitely agree that we all have something to offer, whether it be through arts, sports, medicine, writing, reading, any of these things, and like the intersections between all of these great, beautiful things, definitely all contribute to something and all again just prove that we have something to give each other and we shouldn't be afraid to kind of communicate that as well.
Right. And finding out what's true and real, and overcoming false beliefs that keep us separate and keep us apart. And that's one thing I love about running. As I said, the running community is a worldwide community for people. And when I go to the Boston Marathon every year, and people there of all religions, from all races and all ethnic groups and all political persuasions, and we all just love each other, and all these artificial boundaries just disappear. And it's who you are as a person that matters, not what group you belong to. And we were all human beings. I mean, when you think about it, the atoms in our bodies were formed in the cores of supernovas and ancient stars and so forth. And we're all part of the universe, and we're all part of each other. And to me, that's love. It's love. It's all coming from a huge, vast love that's beyond our understanding. And if we align our lives with that love, out of which everything is manifesting, then we find our right path. And we also find a right way, a good way of relating to everybody else who's also part of that love and part of that miracle of existence.
Yeah, 100%. Those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything else you'd like to reiterate, I guess?
No, I mean, I love staying in touch with people who are in high school now. I feel like it wasn't so long ago I was in high school myself. And you stand in high school and then you're looking out into this adult world and you're saying, how am I ever going to navigate this thing? And you see people doing such crazy things, and like you want to solve the problems of the world. Like I would love to figure out how we can have relationships with each other so there aren't any more wars, and we can solve our inner conflicts. There's always going to be disagreements and conflicts, but learning how to solve in a peaceful way is really important. And I think part of it is just, learning to love each other.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I definitely relate to that. I kind of, as I'm approaching my senior year, like the last year of high school, right before we go off and kind of each do our own things, I definitely kind of see that kind of idea of I'm looking at how ahead. I'm like, what am I going to end up doing? Like, what am I going to end up pursuing? And I think like I feel a lot of fear, to be honest. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I
Yeah,
also feel a lot of joy because like honestly, like the world is endless. The possibilities are endless. And
right,
yeah.
right. There's all kinds of possibilities out there. And you just have to get focused on positive, creating something positive.
Yeah, 100%. If there's nothing else, I think I'll just end the interview here. Thank you so much once again, Bobby, for joining us and honestly giving me so much like great comfort in this message. And I feel so much more inspired now as well.
Yeah, well, I think you're inspiring in what you're doing, and just keep on doing it. And it's a valuable gift. This is part of your gift to the world. So this is wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. To everyone watching out there, I'll see you guys in the next interview. Thank you so much for watching as well.